Hey friends, so welcome to DBC Live. We have a book birthday today. Welcome, Kevin Butler. So excited to have you in the house.
I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my goodness. So we have a book birthday, and I know usually on Thursday nights we do have a free PD night, but when we have book birthdays, it's just a great time to celebrate. So, I mean, who wouldn't want to stop for birthday? I wish we had cake and ice cream and all the things, but I see you got the balloons, you got your pirate shirt on. I'm loving having you as a part of the DBC family.
Well, I'm happy to join it. I still like it until I've like actually I'm touching it, but I still don't believe this is all true. So
It's so true, and you killed it. And so Kevin has written a book called Lights Cameras Teach. It is so good. We're going to talk a little bit about it. We're going to open up the floor for you to have some questions. If you never join us for a book birthday live, it's just an awesome time for you to get to meet the author. We do keep this video on our YouTube channel. Welcome, Joshua. And we also keep it under his book page. So you can always find this book birthday live and go back and rewatch it. And if your district is thinking about doing a book study, we have book ordering, discounts, and all the things. But before we dive into all of that, please do join us in the comments. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do. And typically on Book Birthday Lives, we don't give away a free book of choice. But tonight, as a party favor, we are going to be doing that because it's just taking the place of our professional development. You will probably not get this one because I don't have this one in stock yet, but you will get a book of choice. And if you want to wait a couple of weeks when this one comes in, I'll send it your way as well, if that's the one you choose. So, Kevin, we are so excited, as I said earlier, to have you as a part of the DBC family. And for anyone who doesn't already know you, tell them a little bit about you, what you do. You just started a new job. Tell us a little bit about that. And then we'll dive into some content about the book.
sure. So I am actually entering my 20th year as a classroom teacher. I've taught mostly fifth grade my entire career. Next year, I'm finally graduating up to sixth grade, so I'm super excited and nervous at the same time. But it was time for something new. But the first 12 years, I taught in New York, out on Long Island in the suburbs. And then 8 years ago, I had this really cool opportunity to come to Los Angeles to consult and be a founding member of a new startup school. I did that for a year. If anyone's ever worked in a startup school, it is super, super hard. You really had to like get your resources and be very resourceful. I had all plans on going back to New York. I was only on a leave of absence from my job in New York. But I tell this story all the time. It was February here in LA, and I was getting into my car, and I was complaining how cold it was. And when you turn your car on, it like tells you the temperature it is outside, and it was 62 degrees outside.
I was wondering what that was going to be.
My friends in New York were like shoveling out of a blizzard, so I decided I think it's time to stay here in LA. I was able to find a job at an independent school in the suburbs of Los Angeles, where I not only taught fifth grade full time, but I was also the director of curriculum and instruction K through six. Um, so I wore both hats, which really gave me a really cool insight on both worlds of admin and being a teacher at the same time. It was an awesome opportunity. And then, like I said, I'm starting something brand new, sixth grade next year, new school here in Los Angeles. So I'm super excited about that.
Awesome. And you have started your job already, correct?
I'm in like the in-service type right now. You don't get actual students for another like 2 weeks. So
Okay. That's exciting though. I'm so excited for you. You've kind of done a lot of stuff too. And I love that you've had, got to see the admin side. I know when that happened for me, it was just eye-opening. I'd always say like, oh, the district office. And then I became the district office and I was like, oh, that's me now. I got to make it cool. So we were excited about this. But yeah, so exciting to have this incredible book. We just are over the moon about this one and how it's turned out and how beautiful it truly is. Just like aesthetically, but also the content. So I know that everyone is just wondering what was your purpose behind writing Lights Cameras Teach, and what are you really hoping the readers gain from this book?
it changed actually through the whole like writing process. And actually next year I'm teaching. It's departmentalized, so I'm teaching reading and writing. So to become like a writing teacher formally now and go through this whole writing like process was just so awesome, and I can't wait to share it with my kids, because originally I was using like the Lights Camera Teach to kind of play off the idea of like working in Hollywood, for the past 8 years. But then, as I was writing it, I really, last year was probably the hardest year being a teacher ever. Like worse than 2020, worse than 2021. It was just a really, really tough year. So that kind of changed the direction of the book a little bit. So I kind of start off with acknowledging that I believe we all kind of went through a trauma through teaching through like a global pandemic. And your trauma might be different than mine, but we all went through something together. So that kind of geared the book my goal was to kind of reignite that passion that even I myself lost. And I write a little bit about like the exact moment when I was like doubting, is it time to like maybe move on? Because this is getting really challenging for a lot of different reasons. But something happened that I do write about and I do share in the book that reignited that flame for me. So I hope that I'm able to like spark ideas. It's a play-by-play playbook of a lot of that, which is how it originally started. Of like I get questions a lot of the lesson simulations and the games that I play. So that's the first part of the book, and it really is just scripted out. I wrote it like a screenplay, so that a teacher or a school can open it up and start implementing these things right away. But then I added 2 other parts. Like I basically wrote it as like a script. So there's an act 1, there's an act 2, and an act 3. And the act 2 is really about creating that culture within your actual classroom, and how do you start that, and what do you need. And then finally, act 3 is all about the relationships, because I think going through COVID, and I apologize for keep on bringing it up, but it really was something that I think changed so many of us, that relationships matter. And it's not just relationships with our students within our classroom walls. It's the relationships we have with colleagues. It's the relationships we have with parents. It's the relationships we have with administrators. And when I say colleagues too, I don't just mean our fellow teachers. I mean, the school secretaries, maintenance staff, everybody that's involved in creating a school community. So I write a lot about that, and I compare it to being a director of a blockbuster movie. That a director of a blockbuster movie, they need to collaborate with so many different people.
Yeah.
And that's what we as teachers do. And it's a little bit of a different kind of book in the fact that I've read so many times where people just suggest, like, especially teachers who are a little bit different and do things out of the box, that sometimes just, it's easier to close your door and just worry about what's happening in the walls of your own classroom. This kind of is the opposite. It kind of pushes people to open up your classroom door. And I'm totally honest, like, and transparent. Not everybody's going to walk through that door, but people will walk through that door. And how do we communicate? How do we collaborate? And how do we make it the best we could possibly be?
I'm so excited for this book. I see a lot of people in the comments also. I see Kristen talking about being very interested in this book. Kristen, you will love this book, actually. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I remember, people saying that, just shut your door, do your thing, and don't worry. Like, the rest of the world's never going to jump on board, so stop trying, basically. But I think what I hear you saying is we just need to, do our thing, but also allow others to look on, because a lot of times they say, oh man, if he's doing that, like, maybe I can try it. Or when we're sharing out on social media, being able to collaborate in that way too. Like, I'm trying this thing from Lights Cameras Teach. I'm tagging Kevin. He's talking back and forth with me. Someone else is seeing that and they're like, maybe I should try it. Maybe I could try that. Maybe it would actually work in my classroom too. And the more we do that, we just never know who's looking on and how much that little tiny seed that you planted or that little tiny splash that you make, we never know the far reaching effects of it and how many students it could have impact, right? Rather than us just closing up and just doing it for our 26 students. I mean, really, that's great for that group and every group that comes through you. But what about all these others? Everybody deserves it. And I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah. And it's almost, I look at it too, now that I'm talking about the book more, it's almost like, this is going to sound cheesy, but it's almost like a love letter to like my love of teaching and the 20 years of just being surrounded and meeting so many like incredible educators and shouting those people out. In addition to my own words, there are 17 educators from around the United States that I've spotlighted, and they've added their own voice and they've shared with what they're doing in their own schools. I've also had this voices of 12 of my former students who are in the book as well, so you kind of get an insight on what they remember. And it's not like, oh, Mr. Butler was so great. It was more like, these are the things that we did in class that I remember. And as much as like we as teachers want them to remember like that fraction lesson that we worked so hard on planning and executing, it's these little things that we do every day. It's the small things. It's not those big grand lessons all the time. It's these little routines, these little things that they remember. And that's what's shared throughout the book.
I am just so excited about this book and the impact it's going to have on teachers and students everywhere. And I agree with you. I think I don't remember that kind of stuff about my two favorite teachers. And when I talk about them, I really don't remember how they taught me. I just remember like my second grade teacher giving me hugs, and she made me homemade granola bar every single day. I remember that, and that's all I remember. And somehow she taught me to read that year. I don't remember how though. I don't remember the strategies or the lesson plans. But Kevin, so I'm curious. You talked a little bit about how you're going to be teaching writing this year. We just have a couple more minutes, and also if you're in the comments and you have some questions for Kevin, go ahead and throw those in there. We will try to answer those right after this little segment we're going to talk about. But I'm curious to know, like, your favorite part about experiencing this writing a book, because it is an experience. It's like running a marathon, if you will. And so I'm curious to know, like, what was your favorite part? What part like stood out to you writing of the whole process of writing a book?
I think just getting the feedback. I'm like a weirdo and I love getting feedback. So
Same.
like I grew a lot from it, and getting that feedback. I've been telling this story too, that there's one chapter in the book I remember writing and I rushed through it. Like I just wanted to get it done. There were deadlines and I remember the day sitting, I know exactly where I was sitting, what I was doing. And I probably wasn't in the best mindset that day either. Just a lot of things were going on. And when I got some of the feedback back, they like called that chapter out. They were like, we could tell you rushed through this. Like, we want you to go back. And that was kind of cool because like, yeah, you're right. So like having someone else look at your writing and give you feedback on it is awesome. I think I'm going to be such a better teacher this year because of that whole process.
How will you use that experience to work with your students?
I think knowing how important like conferencing is with kids. And I know it takes so much time, and I'm even trying to like figure out, because it is very departmentalized. So I'm seeing the entire sixth grade. So like, how do we do that? I think like, again, one of the things that came out of COVID was that it kind of pushed a lot of people to get more tech savvy. So I think using like Google Docs to be able to comment on things so kids can see it right away and you can kind of track their own revisions. That's something I'm looking forward to.
Yes, for sure. And I think just being able to model that we've gone through the experience, and there's so much feedback, right? Our editing team is bomb too. I'm just so proud of them for like, being, and they don't hold back. And I love that about them because it makes us all better. And it also helps us to put out a quality product. And like you said, just taking that into the classroom and being able to share that with your students and all of us, as educators, when we're getting feedback, it doesn't always have to be like something that we take to heart and we're frustrated about. Like if we could just model that for our kiddos, like, do you know how many revisions went into play before this book was actually published? And understanding you don't marry your first draft, just like in class, we want that to be the best, and it's just not the best. And there's always room for improvement.
I think people get so scared, like, oh, they didn't like it. A lot of the feedback was like, explain that more, dig deeper into that, because people are going to want to know, like, what that experience was for you.
Felt like, sounded like, looked like. Yeah, for sure. So, Kevin, man, I can't believe our time is already almost up, but we are so very excited. Yes, that's why they call it a draft. Exactly. We are so very excited about your book, Lights, Cameras, Teach, and we can't wait to see the impact that it's going to make on all the students, that the teachers that read it actually get to share with their students. Davis put the link over in the comment section. It's also above and below this video. And Kevin, if people are reading your book and they want to connect with you, where can they find you best?
Instagram is the easiest place. It's just the Kevin J. Butler. I'm trying my best to get better on Twitter, so they could also reach it on Twitter, but it's probably easiest on Instagram.
Instagram at Kevin J. Butler. Maybe Dave can drop that link over in the comments as well. And
website is just the kevinjbutler.com. There's like a contact thing that people could click as well.
I'm going to drop that one in the comments, the kevinjbutler.com website. And any other information you just want them to know or be mindful of as they start to read and study the book and put it into play with their students?
I think just go with an open mind. That I try to make it like, I try to emphasize slow and steady wins the race. That you can't take any book and try to do everything in it. I compare it to like going to, I love houseplants. I have like an addiction to buying houseplants. And when I go to like the garden shop, I want to buy every single plant I see, but like that would be ridiculous. And I think that's the same like mindset we have to have when we read books like this. Is we can't implement everything immediately, but think about the things that think about one thing that maybe you can do this year, or in the fall, or maybe something later on. And then just collaborate, like try to find a way to open that classroom door, and find someone to just work with, because like I say repeatedly throughout the book, relationships truly matter.
It's so true. And I think we need that more than ever now. And like you said, after the really tough, you're not the only educator that have said that. Like a lot of educators on these lives have said that was the toughest year they have had thus far in their career. They haven't all been teaching for 20 years. So I believe you when you say that. And I think all the more that we need to put into place something like Lights, Cameras, Teach, with strategies. You're going to hear from other educators. So Kevin not only talks about collaborating with educators, he models it right inside of his book. And then you're going to get to hear from students what they actually took away when they left Kevin's class and became an adult. And so be mindful of that as we go into this year and things start stressing us out and we start to feel overwhelmed with all the demands. Sometimes it's just the little things that we do every single day that makes the biggest difference for the students. It's what they recall when they're older and thinking about school and thinking about their favorite teacher. So we are, again, just looking forward to all the greatness that's going to come out of this book. And Kevin, we couldn't be more excited for you. So happy book birthday. And if you haven't got this book, go grab it. And if you put anything in the comments, you will be entered to win a free book of choice. We will be choosing that tomorrow morning. So, somebody's going to join us for the book birthday. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you next Thursday night at our normal time, which is 6:30. Bye, everyone.